All right, my English teacher friends, got a two birds, one stone writing workshop for you. So if your kids are anything like mine, a lot of my students dislike poetry. They have a deep antipathy for poetry. And one of the things I'm doing this year is showing them the connection between the music they listen to and poetry. And it seems to be a great like gateway drug into an affinity for poetry. So the second bird that I want to do is a lot of my students are struggling to hit the thesis point when they write about poetry and or song lyrics. So I teach on-level juniors and we do a ton of literature because I'm in New York State and we have the Regents exam. And I also teach AP literature. So I'm going to straddle both sides of the fence here and kind of go in the middle in terms of how I would teach this and go over my heuristic of the inverted thesis template in terms of housing the thesis statement in the introductory paragraph. So what we'll do is this. I told my students that, hey, get this. A lot of the rap and hip hop artists that you guys like, they actually write poetry. So I created a unit in which we are taking a look at 25 poems written by, average run of the mill hip hop rap artists. And to demonstrate how to do the introductory paragraph to get anchored in the thesis, I chose two poems and I will Bob Ross how to write those introductions for you in this workshop. I chose Tupac's The Rose That Grew from Concrete and a Kanye West poem called Divorce. And I'll go through both of those and show you how the heuristic of the inverted thesis template works. So before we even jump into that, let's ask the question, right? Let's do a little litmus test with our students here and even ask our own pedagogical approaches here a question. How do I write the introductory paragraph? Well, here's the kicker. No matter what, I got to Bob Ross this, right? I really want teachers that I work with to embrace their inner Bob Ross and paint with and for their students with the use of heuristics, whether they're mine or somebody else's. So Bob Ross always painted with the wet on wet technique. That was his heuristic that he always used for natural landscapes. And when my students get to the introductory paragraph, they can either declare or invert the thesis. And I keep life really simple. And I just say for literary analysis, invert that sucker from top to bottom. And it seems to work like a charm. So for my AP Lit friends, for all three FRQs on the exam, my students will invert the thesis. So I didn't create any complicated prompt for this. I'm just kind of going a la College Board. And if you go back into the annals, all the way back into like the 1970s, if you look at prompts for FRQ1 and FRQ2, they're pretty much asking the same question, just using different verbiage every time. And any prompt, if it's good, if it's going to set kids up to perform literary analysis, is implicitly asking two questions. What is the authorial intent? And how does the author construct meaning? So with this one, right, I already said we're going to go with the inverted thesis. It kind of looks like this. It's a triangle flipped up on top of its head. So in this case, you end with the thesis. Whenever the student responds to the question, how does the author construct meaning? That comprises the thesis statement. So you're going to end by answering that question. So the last sentence of the introduction answers the question, how does the author construct meaning? The first three sentences are going to answer the question, what is the authorial intent? And I know that some teachers refer to that as universal theme, universal truth, exigence, whatever language you want to house that in works. So that takes three sentences. There's other things that I want to see students do in the introduction. One is I want them to cop a certain academic feel in their tone. So I want to see a fair amount of tier 2 level vocabulary. And what I mean by that is your average run-of-the-mill SAT level caliber words. I run intensive word study academies from day one and go throughout the entire academic year. So my students really augment their vocabs exponentially over time. And then those that are familiar with my YouTube channel know that I really do a lot of work yeoman's work to get my students to be syntactical ninjas at sentence level. So I want them to focus on their sentence constructs. I use Strunk and White's seminal text, Write It Right, in which they have Rule 18 that asserts that there's 12 different sentence types. And I also use a book called The Art of Styling Sentences, 20 Patterns for Success. And I got a ton of videos in my YouTube channel about that there's 20 different ways to pattern a sentence. So I'm going to do some syntactical flips and flares in this just so that you get a sense. So let's break that down. 3 plus 1. 3 sentences authorial intent, 1 sentence construction of meaning. The first poem I'm going to take a look at is Kanye West's poem Divorce. I can put this poem in the description links, and it's a kind of a hard poem to find, and that's why I'm using it for this, so that kids don't mock and steal my thunder. They got 25 poems to choose from in the packet that I put together for them. So I'm going to write about divorce. I don't want them writing about divorce. I'm just modeling for them how to manipulate the inverted heuristic. So here's my first one. It can be said that love does not know its depth and magnitude until the hour of separation. And while in the throngs of experiencing the immediacy of this loss, everything hurts. No matter if one is just an average citizen or Hollywood's most recognizable star, the human experience of grieving wears the same face. So that's 3 sentences in. And that's the whole thing, is like Kanye getting a divorce from the Kardashian girl. I don't know my Kardashians very well, right? So it's all about his grief and the loss and the heartache. So that is the universal truth of the piece. Last sentence is construction of meaning. And what I want my students to do is focus on the most salient, relevant, germane literary terms, devices, techniques, but I don't want it to be a literary terms dumping ground. I tell them to focus on the 2, maybe possibly 3 most important ones. So look at what I do here. Kanye West expresses this idea in his poem through his litany of similes and frequent use of anaphora. So you can see that I have litany, simile, and anaphora. In my estimation, based on my read of the poem, those are really key. So at the AP level, I know that most teachers advise their students to actually use terms, devices, techniques in the introduction. It's kind of a, it gets the reader's antennae up, and they see the terms, the devices, the techniques, and they say, bingo, there's the thesis statement. So I advise my students to go that route as well. All right, that might be a little confusing just seeing it once. So when I Bob Ross for my students, I always do it 3 times. So let's roll back and do it again. Same poem, same heuristic, 3 plus 1. There are some things in life that are hard to reconcile, like the finality of divorce. Like, aha, that's the whole thing, right? So very simply said, that's the whole poem in a nutshell. But for some, acceptance can be rather elusive. In these cases, the one who's suffering and grieving can get so engrossed in their loss that they in fact spend their time beating their head against a wall, hoping to transform it into a door. And now I'm 3 sentences in. Same thing. Last sentence, hit me with the terms, devices, techniques. This idea is clearly manifest in Kanye's poem through his hyperbolic diction and grocery list of hurts. So I'm focusing on the litany again. So let's look at vocab. We didn't do that for the first one. So just a little bit of tier 2. Reconcile is good, elusive, engrossed. What else is in here? Manifest, hyperbolic, right? So things like that bode well. You'll also notice that when I write, I really don't parallel my syntax ever in an introduction. And I definitely don't stack independent clauses upon short, simple declarative upon short, simple declarative, because that just yields a dot, 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 dot rhythm. So each sentence differs from the one that precedes it, and that's one good litmus test to ensure that students are at least attempting to yield a good voice rhythm and flow. So as I said, I always model 3 times. I tell my students, yes, you can. This might look hard, but you absolutely can do it. It's pretty easy. It's just 3 plus 1. So here is another one. While divorce literally unbinds two people who vowed to stay together for life, it can shackle a person to grief and suffering. Again, that's the whole exegesis. That's like the pith and substance of what Kanye's driving home in this poem. When one truly loves another person and that love comes to an end, it can be hard to accept and even harder to move on. Such losses can be so profoundly tragic that they can be difficult to give voice to, right? So, and that's what Kanye's doing. He's giving voice to the hardships and the grueling agony he's experiencing at the hands of this divorce. Fourth sentence, you guessed it: terms, devices, techniques, construction of meaning, answer the question. But in Kanye's poem, he touches upon these themes through his long list of similes and simple allusions. And that, my friends, is how to do the inverted thesis template for Kanye West's poem Divorce. But I ain't done. I really want to solidify this for my students and show them how to manipulate this. So I'm going to do it another time just to take it out of the clouds and make it less nebulous for them. So in this one, I'm going to use Tupac's famous poem, The Rose That Grew from Concrete. And again, the math is 3 plus 1. I'm going to go 3, authorial intent, 1, construction of meaning. And again, just to reiterate, when you answer the construction of meaning question, that comprises the thesis statement. So check this out. In a sense, America has its caste system. It stands to reason that if one grows up in poverty, they will be stuck in that predicament for life and vice versa. This is especially true of kids growing up in the urban jungle. Tupac, however, proved to be an exception to this rule, which is depicted through the personification and extended metaphor of the rose. Again, just hit me with the terms, devices, techniques in the end sentence there, in the fourth sentence. So first three sentences, authorial intent, last sentence, construction of meaning. New poem, same approach. So 3 plus 1, what is the author's intent? How does the author construct meaning? Let's do it one more time. Exemplar number 2 for this poem. Rags to riches stories are at the fabric of the concept of the American dream. But the thing is, especially for minorities, actualizing these dreams is rare. It takes a lot of gut, perseverance, determination, and a bit of divine intervention to invert the typical course of how one's life script plays out. All right, I'm at the end here. Tupac, through the personification of the rose, expresses how he is one such fortunate individual to have made something remarkable of his life from the seeming scraps of nothing. Very cool. Oh, we so can do this, right? Let's get to the blank canvas. Let's get to the easel and paint one more the exact same way. 3 plus 1. By and large, one is born into their lot in life. For the vast majority of Americans, if one is born poor, they will remain in positions of poverty for life, no matter their efforts. And conversely, those born into privileged spaces tend to stay there regardless of how life unfolds. Tupac, however, is an anomaly in that he defies this narrative and metaphorically becomes a rose that grew from the most infertile of places. And that, my friends, is 6 times the exact same heuristic of the inverted thesis. If you want to, pause here and have your students give it a whirl. So, I used a whole bunch of poems from like The Last Poets. I went old school, like old school hip hop. Got some poems from Rum DMC, Tragically Hip. So all those dudes wrote poetry that is very, very good and excellent for analysis, even at the AP literature level. So that's it for me. Happy teaching, happy writing. If you need to reach out, hit me up at teachingwritingcoach@gmail.com. I also have a website, teachinghowtowrite.com. And I'm a lead teacher for the National Writing Project. Also present for NCTE quite often. So you can see my comings and goings in my calendar of events and PDs. Some are free, most are free, and some are for a nominal fee. So just check that out. All right, that's it from here. Be well, and hope this helps you out and demystifies how to tackle a thesis statement in the introductory paragraph.